They arrived that Friday exactly when they said they would, pulling into the driveway with an energy that didn't belong to my quiet, aging home. I remember standing in the doorway, watching their silver SUV roll to a stop, the cold November air settling around me like a warning I didn't yet understand. Melissa stepped out first, all polished smiles and perfect hair, holding a casserole dish as if she were stepping into a magazine photo. Connor followed right behind her, dragging 2 large suitcases as though he was moving in for good, not just staying for a while. As he'd put it on the phone that he hugged me with more enthusiasm than I'd seen from him in years, and I felt the faint, expensive cologne he always wore. It didn't match the son I remembered, the boy who smelled of grass after playing outside or of grease from helping me fix the car. This version of him felt manufactured. Melissa kissed my cheek politely, telling me she'd brought my favorite lasagna. Odd thing was, I'd been spending most of my evenings in that same familiar corner of the house, the one Margaret used to call my thinking chair. The room always felt a little too big now, a little too quiet, as if the walls themselves missed the sound of her laughter. The late autumn light coming through the window stretched long shadows across the floor, and I'd watch them slowly fade as the sun dipped behind the Bow River. It had been 2 years since she passed, yet the silence still felt new, sharp in some places, hollow in others. A man gets used to many things in life, but losing the one person who filled the air around him, that's a kind of emptiness that doesn't fade easily. That evening was no different. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked its slow, steady rhythm, reminding me that time kept moving even if I felt stuck in place. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking into the empty room, making casual comments the way I used to when Margaret sat nearby with her knitting. Then I'd stop. Over the following months, Marina's dedication became impossible to overlook. She treated every contract with the same care she once used while polishing boardroom tables, reading line by line, never rushing, never assuming. Her accuracy saved the company from several costly mistakes, and her reputation for thoroughness spread across departments. Promotions followed naturally, not because she chased them, but because she earned them through consistency and quiet brilliance. Eventually, she found herself leading a team, then guiding entire divisions, until one day she stepped into a corner office not as a visitor, but as the vice president of operations. And even then, she never lost sight of who she had been. Late at night, she often paused at her window, remembering the uniform she once wore and the moment she almost stayed silent. It reminded her that a single act of courage can change the direction of a life. The days that followed felt unreal, as if I were moving through someone else's life. The police moved quickly, more quickly than I expected. They interviewed Dr. Chen, collected the lab results, and then asked me a long series of questions: who prepared my meals, who had access to the kitchen when the symptoms began, what had changed in the house recently. Every answer pointed in the same direction, though I struggled to accept it. Still, the detectives remained calm and methodical, explaining that cases like this required clear evidence, not suspicion alone. And so they proposed a plan, one that made my stomach twist with fear. They wanted surveillance inside my home. Hidden cameras, discreet audio recorders, devices placed in corners and cabinets where no one would notice. The idea of returning to that house, knowing what I now suspected, filled me with a cold dread. But walking into Dr. Chen's office felt strangely comforting, the way familiar places often do when the rest of your world feels uncertain. I'd known James for over 15 years. He'd treated Margaret through her hardest days, and he'd always spoken to me with a gentleness that made even bad news feel manageable. But the moment he saw me step through the door, something in his expression shifted. His smile faltered just slightly, as if he were registering details I couldn't yet see: sunken eyes, pale skin, trembling fingers. He didn't say anything at first, just placed a hand on my shoulder and guided me into the examination room. He went through the usual checks: blood pressure, breathing, pulse, but each movement carried a carefulness that made me uneasy. When he finally sat down and looked at me, there was none of the casual warmth he normally carried. It started so subtly that at first, I blamed age, stress, even the cold November weather creeping into my bones. The first few days after Connor and Melissa moved in, I noticed a heaviness settling over me, a kind of tiredness that sleep didn't fix. I'd wake up already exhausted, as though I'd spent the night working instead of resting. At breakfast, Connor would place a large plate in front of me, eggs, bacon, toast, more food than I could ever eat alone, and I'd try my best, but after a few bites, a strange wave of nausea would rise in my stomach. I brushed it off. Maybe I wasn't used to eating that much anymore. Maybe my appetite was changing with age, but every day, the feeling deepened. My hands started trembling slightly when I held my coffee mug. My joints felt stiff, my head light, and by afternoon I'd need to sit down because the